More hull stuff. Hi, and welcome back to Plastic Models by Regular Dude, and part number 6 of the Dragon 1/35th scale SdKfz184 Elefant project. So in the last episode, part 5, excuse me, I was able to complete steps 14 through 17, which is all of this, the main gun, commander's cupola, and some hull fittings, casemate fittings actually. So the next thing is step 18, and that's more of the parts for the casemate, some tool stuff, and then we get on into step number 19, which is the front upper hull, and 20, which is more of the same, and then pretty much finalizing some stuff before we add the main gun. So as always, I'm going to start with demonstrating how I cut and clean parts from the sprue for the first few parts, so you can see what I'm doing in case it's your first time watching. And after that, I will do that type of thing off camera. So let's start here with excuse me, step 18, which is the back of the upper casemate and the periscope covers. But before we get into that, I need to point out something else here. So as you can see, I have got a white piece of plastic here stretching across the inside of this, and the reason I'm doing that is this casemate here, the sides were bowed in I should say, and it was causing some not so great fit onto the top of the hull, which I had the same problem with, but I fixed with these white plastic sprue rods. So I'm doing the same thing here. I've already got it in place, and what I did is I cut the this round tubing at an angle to match the sides of the vehicle, and then using these clamps, I placed them in a way that they push this rod down far enough to reduce that bow. So with that stretched out where it needs to be, I'm going to take my To Me Extra Thin and glue around that. Let it set up really well before I remove it. So in the meantime, I can work some more on the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off first these two parts E13. This is one of those things where you can do one of two things. You can either have those open with the periscopes exposed or closed. I'm going to do closed just because I want the top of the hull to look nice and clean. So we've got parts 13 here, E13 here and here. So I'm going to cut those off, and I cut it back a little ways like that. This one likewise. And then using my handy dandy cutter, I will cut it flush like that, and flush like that. And then here I need to be really careful because this is on the edge of this round part here. So what I like to do is I'll cut it at a slight angle like that, leaving a little bit there. And then I'll cut that off to more imitate or mimic the curve of the curved part, and then gently finish rounding it off like that. Then on the side here is a mold seam line, so I need to trim that off there, and then scrape that. I mean, you could sand it too, but I prefer to scrape stuff like this, especially when it's quite a bit of material needs to be removed like that. I actually don't have to be really that particular about it because it's going between two ears here like this, so it fits in there like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold that in place, and I'm going to have to do it a different way. So make sure it's all centered up, and using my Tamiya extra thin, touch it to the joint there and there, let it flow underneath the part, and voila. So I'll do that real quick with this other one, then we can move on. Okay, I've got that. So the next part I need to do are these two hinge contraptions, E25. There's two of those, so I'm gonna cut those off. E25, there's one there, and there. Same thing, clean these up, cut these off flush there. And there. And then carefully cut this one off here. And then using a thin sanding stick, sand that sprue gate nub off of there. I don't like to use technical terms, but sometimes that's all I've got. Sprue gate nub is one of them. Okay, got that, and then cut this off flush here and here. Make sure that's sanded schmoove. Sand those edges down where that mold parting line is. And do the same with the other one. Then I can glue those in place here. There's two locating pins, two holes, and it goes right there. Like that. So put a little, whoops. A little extra thin in there, and then push it down. One thing to remember, if you get some of this excess cement on there, it's no big deal because it evaporates pretty quickly and it doesn't do too bad. As long as you don't touch it or anything like that, you don't have to worry about any lasting damage. to the part. And there we go. Alright, so we got those. So that takes care of pretty much everything on the upper part of the hull. So then we have two more lifting hooks like these here, but for back here. So those are parts A8 and 9. Now these parts, don't know if you can see it in the video here, but the sprue gate is kind of on top, or actually it would be on the back surface of the part, and that allows you to more easily clean the sprue gate up since there is weld detail along that edge. So what I like to do is cut it back just a little bit, and then technically you could just cut it off this way, but I like to cut it even with the detail. That way it doesn't get damaged when I cut the part off the back. So I've got that. So now I can put my cutter on here like this. Now if you don't have a cutter like this, you got one of the more coarse cutters, you can just trim it off with a knife and then sand it if you have to. These kind of cutters cut them pretty close. There's a little bit excess there. My cutters are starting to get worn out, I think. Alright, so there's that. So now we're ready to glue these in place. And there, whoops. So this weld detail right here, the edge of it, goes up against the edge of that right there. So I'm going to do, now, to me extra thin is designed to be used a certain way. And I'm going to show you, sometimes people will slather their glue on there and monkey around, and by the time they get it on there, it may stick, but it's not creating a really strong joint. So what you can do though on a small part like this is put a little bit of, to me, extra thin on there like that, and then carefully, using my big old fat fingers, being these tweezers, and kind of tack it into place like that. Then once you get it positioned like you want it, which that should be flat like that, then you take your extra thin or whatever liquid cement you have, and just touch it to the edge like that in the inside corner, and then using a toothpick so I don't take the risk of leaving any fingerprints, just mash it into place, and that melted plastic should kind of fill in any seam around the edge of that weld detail. If it doesn't quite do it, which it has mostly, add a little bit more, and that will further soften the plastic. Now, the weld detail on this kit is really good, and most importantly, it's to scale. Some people like to add their own weld detail via different methods, whether it be styrene rod melted in place and then smashed with a knife to simulate a weld, or they'll use like two-part epoxy putties or whatever, and those all work really well. However, sometimes you have to be careful that you get it in scale, because sometimes people will do that and it will just be too large, or the weld beads, the texture that weld seams have will be grossly out of scale. It'll look cool, but it's just not in scale. So when you can use the kit detail, just use it. Take advantage of it. All right, so we got those two hooks on. So now I can move on to more of the details on the back here. Since I have demonstrated what's going on, I'm not going to show you how I cut the parts off and clean them. Now here is where it pays to look at all the contents of your box, because what we have here is a supplemental bonus rear hatch assembly. And it looks like the kit part on the main instructions is just a big bare plate. Well, not a bare plate, but a bolted on plate. Not really hatches. Whereas this here, these are hatches. So there's extra parts going on with this little instruction kit and the associated parts, which are sprue S. So let me see if I can find that. Here it is. So this replaces the parts on the kit. It's got this like rain, kind of a rain gutter type thing. Deflects the rain from going down into the hatch. But it's kind of cool looking because, you know, it's extra parts and it just looks pretty groovy. Now this is also, this here replaces another part on the upper hatch if you so desire, and I guess it just depends on which vehicle you're doing, because you know, they can be different, I suppose. So I'm going to use these parts here, so I'm going to get them all cut off and ready to go. And there's also some extra tracks can be hung on hooks on the back here as well, and I think I will probably do that. But let me look at my marking options and kind of decide which way I'm going to go. Well, all the marking options show the same thing, so I think I'm going to go, just because it's got some of this extra little parts going on, a little more detail happening, you know, with the rain gutter and all that kind of stuff. I think I'm going to use the parts on the S sprue. So I'm going to get all those cut off and get those ready to go. So on closer inspection, I think I am going to go with the other parts as opposed to this S sprue. Mainly because of this extra Zimrit piece. It's not split, and I don't want to cut it for that that hatch. So I'm going to go with the regular parts here. So let me get those cut off. So I need to glue this photo etch part on here, this photo etch Zimrit. So on this one, since I don't want to get it too high up on the plastic, I'm going to apply it here. And here. And some right there. And then the rest of it I'll do down here like this. And I'm putting this on before I put it on the before I put this cover on the back of the hole there. That way I can use this surface here to make sure I get it flat and level. So I can do this, I'm getting it all over my fingers and then dropping it in place there, and just make sure It's all smashed down, and for that I'm going to use these other two clamps. There. Whoops. And there. All right, I'm gonna let that cure up for a minute. Let's see. Go ahead and clean these other parts up for the rest of that hatch. All right, so we got A15 goes here. Okay, these parts are ready. Okay, this is ready, so I can put this on here like that. Needs a little bit more sanding. Goes there. Yeah, it's better. Let's see. See if I can do this without getting a big old fat fingerprint everywhere. There we go. That looks pretty good. Cement there and there. And this little teeny tiny handle here. Gonna put a little bit of cement there and there. Like that. That looks pretty good. And then this will go in there. And as I said, I will use that to make sure it's pretty level. A little bit of cement. I don't want to push this into position because I don't want it. I want this seam left around this thing. So I'm just gonna let it sit there and dry without messing around with it. Okay, so I'll set that aside and let that dry for a few minutes, and then we can move on to the other parts. Next, I need to put in these plugs here, pistol ports or whatever they are, on the sides of the hull and on the back of the hull. And those are all Y26. Then I also need to do the sledgehammer. But I think what I'm going to do, just for something different, I usually always do the tools. I don't know if I've ever actually done this, but I'm going to put the clamps in place, and I'm going to use the photo etch parts. I'm going to put those in place, but I'm not actually going to put the tool in place, just for something different. So I'm going to cut these parts out first, and then I'll cut the photo etch parts and get those ready to assemble and install. Alright, I'm ready to start gluing this stuff on. Another thing I did is for these brackets that are going to go on here, spare track brackets, I made another length of spare track. So we'll do that here in a sec because those tracks are drying. But these plugs need to go into place first, and just a matter of dropping them in place and putting a dab of cement on there. Now I'm having to kind of squish this one in because that Zimmerit is interfering just a little bit. And then one here. One here. Now these come with an internal part, which is like an eye bolt attachment kind of thing. And there is also photo etch chain that comes on the kit supplied photo etch, so you can have one of these kind of dangling in place. But since I'm doing a button-up version of this, I will not obviously be using those. Alright, so I got that, and then I also need to cut off A16, which is a grab handle, which is right here. Once I get these glued into place, then I can put the handle in place, and also this I think it's A17 goes right there. So again, I'm going to do like I usually do on stuff like this, and I'm going to add a little bit of cement just to tack this in place. Like that. Make sure it's lined up. Now, one thing to watch for, especially on kits that have been around for a few years, you need to watch for angled molding. I don't know how else to explain it, but you'll have a part like these brackets here, and if it's like a bracket type thing, it's flat and it's supposed to be perpendicular to the surface of the wherever it's going. Because of the molding process, you know, you may have a part like, say it's one of these brackets, and boy, this is going to be a nice illustration. It's supposed to be in cross section pretty much a rectangle. Well, because of the molding process and the parts having to be pushed out of the mold, the parts can be kind of angled like this to allow them to come out. Now these are exaggerated. Sometimes they'll be this way, especially on real old kits, but on newer kits, not quite as bad, but they'll be angled. So like, say this part right here needs to go this direction and glue onto a flat surface, and it's supposed to be perpendicular. Well, because of this angle, if you were to just glue it right off the sprue, then your part, again, this is an extreme illustration, but the part won't be perpendicular. So what you need to do is you need to clean this, sand or scrape or cut these parts to where they are truly perpendicular. That way when you glue them on, they will be attached to the kit properly. So like the bracket won't be at an angle. So in a case like this, hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. And it's generally pretty noticeable. So in this one here, the angle is kind of like this. So just using a knife, I'm touching the high side and scraping it till it's a 90-degree angle here. Hopefully that all makes sense. But it's something to watch for, because you know, if you glue these on, they're going to be cocked like this instead of. All right, so there's just a quick tip on one of the things to watch for. And again, like I said, it's really more common on older kits, but it's still a thing on some newish kits. Generally though, nowadays it seems like they try and mold stuff to where it doesn't, whoa, it's not so pronounced. Okay. Then I'll put some cement around here like this, just so it'll reinforce it. And if you don't get it quite right as far as the angle on the part, you can glue it in place, kind of mash it on there, and then while the cement is still soft, you can just straighten them up and align them properly. So let's see if, oh yeah, it's the right angle or the right distance apart. So we'll let that dry a little bit, and while that's drying, I'll go ahead and install these parts here. This A17 is a disc. It's got a pin on the other side that drops into that hole right there. And just put that like that. And then this part here has a couple of pins that fit into holes there. There's just a little bit of flash. I'll trim that off. Put a very light dot or a heavy dot, whatever. Cement there. And put that in place there. And just make sure it's firmly mashed into place and perpendicular to this angle here. So now I'm going to cut off these photo etch parts for the sledgehammer, which are photo etch parts MB 17, 18, and 3. Alright, due to the precarious nature of this particular endeavor, I did this off camera. So the little clamp and the holder for the sledgehammer head. So there's that. And that takes care of, what is that? That's step 18. That's the conclusion of step 18, except for the track. Let's see if I can glue this on. Let's see how this works. Okay, it's being not nice. So let's. All right, give me a second here. All right, so I got it in place. That was quite an ordeal, I must say. So I'm going to put a little bit of the old cement on there. Like that. And a little bit right there. Alright, so I need to let that dry because that's on there rather precariously, it seems. So one more dose of cement to firm it up. Okay, well that works out good because the next part is step 19, which is the upper deck. For that, I need to cut off parts A1, A37, Y5, A20, A21, and A19. Also A36, A18, all these parts. So I'm going to cut all those parts off, and we will take a look at what we've got. All right, this is the order I'm going to do this. So this part is bowed this way. In order for it to fit right with the casemate and be flush, it needs to be bowed up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this in place all the way around here. Glue it all in really good. Let it set up good. Then using a piece of this cut to the appropriate length, I'm going to glue that in and add support to the top like this, bow it up to where it is flat and level. Now there's other ways it could be done, like putting a cross member across, a crossbar across there, but I don't think that's real necessary, and it would have to be exactly the right height because this part drops down inside of here. This sits on top, so this would have to be glued. If I did a flat piece, it'd have to be the perfect height. So it's just too complicated, almost as complicated as that explanation. But that is not what I'm going to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue all this in, and I'm going to use 2 glues for that. I use this here and the Tamiya extra thin. So for this here, because I want it to kind of fill in the gap a little bit, because there is a slight bit of a gap by the weld detail there and there. I'm going to use this. So put some right on the edge here like this. Boy, I got that all over the place. Cup of coffee before modeling probably wasn't a good idea. Today, anyway. And some here. Good grief. Make sure that's snapped in there. Push that up into place. And then using extra thin, some here first, and here. And then put some in there. here. Make sure that's pressed down good. There. All right, and make sure it's all pressed down. Okay, and then let that dry really good. In the meantime, I'll cut off these extra parts and have those ready. Got this on standby for when this cures up. And we'll be good. Alright, I got all these pieces cut out. So now we can start assembling them. So first, we'll start with the biggest piece, which is Y5. And that goes right here. There's a large pin, small pin, smaller pin, and it fits right there like that. So for this, I'm going to use my heavier cement in the middle, and then I'll use extra thin on the edges. Now, one thing I want to make sure I do is get these edges sanded good, because if I don't, it's really going to show up under paint and weathering. So I gotta make sure that's much better. This one here needs a little bit more. Okay, so there we go. All right, so first, put some there and there. And then extra thin. Along the edges. There. Some on this side here. Make sure it all stays firmly in place. And the next parts, which are A20, 21, and 19. Now, these don't have positive locations, so I'm going to put them in place here and kind of see how they line up. Okay, so looks like it's just best, you know what, actually, looks like it's best to just center them up. Yeah, because the these hinge things center up with the hinge parts on here, so it's going to be crucial that I keep those in the right place. So that looks pretty good right there. So I'm going to put some cement in these spots here. Let the extra thin do its work and seep in underneath where it goes. Let that set up for a second because I don't want it to get loose and crooked. So next part are these here, which I have no idea what they are. They're bolted on detail bits, but there's a pin and a corresponding hole. So it goes there. I'm assuming it's part of the assembly fixtures that help hold the whole thing together. You know, on the real deal. Put those there, and then make sure they're pressed down. And that pretty much takes care of the first portion of step 19. So then step 20 are these covers, these louver covers, and then these covers that go back here. All right, all the parts are all trimmed up and ready to glue on. But first, let me talk a little bit about what I did here. I cut a piece of that plastic tubing, styrene tubing, so I can take out the bow or warp in that top plate. So I haven't glued it in yet because I wanted to make sure I have it the right length, and I do need to trim it off just a little bit because right now it's bowed up and I don't want that. So I'll take this out, and I'm just going to use my knife and trim it just a little bit. Okay, that's a little bit better, I think. Let's see if I sand it a little bit there. And give it another try. Okay, let's see. That's still a little bit much. So let me mess around with this for a couple of minutes and get it to a more manageable length. I'll glue it in. Actually, I'm not even going to need that. I had this in there whenever I glued these parts on, and that reinforced it. So when I took that out, it relaxed a little bit, and it is pretty stinking straight. So that worked out really well. With that in mind, I can now glue some more of this stuff on here. So let's start. Let's see, I've got those glued on. Got these glued on. So let's go ahead and do these covers here. And the way these fit, it looks like, is we've got this ridge here. Should fit. Oh, let's see. Let me see if I can see how these are supposed to fit on here. Because in typical fashion, these, well, they don't have a real positive location on it, but it looks like they fit like that. Yeah, what it is there's a ridge right here, a raised part of sprue that fits in between here and here on all these. So looks like that'll work. So let me get some cement, and for this I'm going to use my thicker cement. Whoops, oh, great. And I got sloppy there. Oh well. Hopefully it'll even out as it dries. All right, that's not too bad. Got a little ham-fisted with that one. Oh yeah, that looks good. So hopefully, for all you watching my little illustrations here on how to take care of warped stuff has helped. It is it's a good thing to know because it can salvage an otherwise problematic kit. It doesn't just apply, I should say, to armor kits, because sometimes with aircraft kits you need to do things to the wings to get the wing root lined up better, stuff like that. I had one person ask why couldn't I just use a piece of flat I can't find it. Just a flat piece of sprue. Just say take some polystyrene sheets like those made by Evergreen scale models. Why couldn't I have used something like that to cut a strip the right length and add support? Well, the problem with that is just using this as an illustration. Say this is a piece of flat sprue. When put under tension, it's gonna bow a lot easier than this will. This has a little more structural rigidity to it, so as to maintain its shape. So that's why I would use something like this in a case like this. Sometimes flat sprue works fine, but in this case, I didn't see it working, so that's why I used the tubing. So anyway, enough of that. Let's get back to this here. These louvers next. Now, these louvers here, according to the instructions, this little notch on the center louver is supposed to go that direction. See, it fits right there like that. So for that, I'm going to use extra thin. On the four corners. And always keep in mind that these things that I offer up as suggestions and solutions to certain problems, they're not the only solutions. So don't take it that I mean there's only one way of doing something, because it's not. There's multiple ways. People come up with all kinds of cool stuff to fix things. So just thought I'd throw that out there. Okay, same thing here. We've got this notch in this grill. Needs to match up there. So that goes like that. Same thing, each corner. Okay, and then on this one, these notches, there's a notch here and here. Those face outwards like that. More extra thin. like that. And then the next thing I need to do are these handles here, pins, holes, you know the drill. This is kind of nice because they're flat, so I can put them in place and then just put some cement around them. And hope. Whoa. So those holes are really large, so make sure that you cover those holes up with the part. Like that. Whoops. Knock this one over. All right, there's that. And then the last part of step 20 is this shieldy bit here for the antenna base. And same thing, it's got weld detail around the bottom of it, so put your cement on there and kind of mash it in place, and it'll take care of any gaps that are going on. And then finally, I need to clean this off a little better here. We have the antenna base. That. Press that into place and make sure it's vertical. Awesome. So that takes care of step 20. So for step 21, we've got some more details here, and so we've got hatches, so we've got some periscopes to take care of, and then these bolt plates here. I think those are plates that help hold the superstructure in place. So we got those, and then some other small details. So I'm going to get all those cut off. I have a few photo etch parts to construct, so let me get all that stuff cut off and ready to go. Actually, before I start cutting all that stuff on, I think I'm going to glue this in place so it can be curing up. So whoops, I forgot to peel that piece of tape off. So what I need to do is I need to run some cement, and it looks like the best contact points are going to be along the back. And again, we got some bowed action going on there, but I could brace it there. Let me take a look. Okay, so here's what I'm doing. First, I need to glue a piece right here to counteract the motion that's going to go on there. So then I've got this notched out, so I can put it here. Now I'm going to have to cut it off a little bit, and what I'm going to do is drop it down below this lip, and that'll give it a nice firm hold. So let me trim a little bit of that off. And the way I rounded these off is I just used one of my diamond files here, or whatever they're called, and I just used a round one, and I made myself a round indentation there to kind of help hold it in place, keep it from popping off of the roundness. And then I'll just push that down there like that. That one counteracts this one, keeps that straight, keeps the sides like they're supposed to be. And Just needs a little bit taken off the edge. I'll do that with a sanding stick here. I'll take off too much. It's better to take off a little bit at a time. Let's see how that looks, because I don't want it to bow too far out. Okay, so we got that there, and there we go. So let me test fit it here, and that looks much better on the back. Nice and lined up. All right, so we're good there. So now all I got to do is glue it in place. But first, I need to glue these on the inside. So let me use to me extra thin. Some there. 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 And there. Okay. I'm gonna let that set up for a second before I actually start trying to glue this together, because I'm gonna do some clamping and stuff like that. But that looks pretty good. So let me take a look underneath here. Yeah, looking pretty dandy. Okay, so I'm gonna let that sit up for a second, and then I'll start putting some cement on it. After looking at it, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to glue the front part first, and then I will glue the back, because the back is slightly higher on this corner in relation to the lower hull. So I'm going to get that together, let that set up, and then I'll glue across the back and use some clamps to pull it down tight. But I'm going to glue the front first and make sure that's nice and solid. So for that, I'm just going to use to be extra thin, and I think I'm going to clamp this baby first. I want to make sure this is all squared up and looking good. Okay, so I'm going to use this here, and I'm going to be careful to do it where the wheel is, so as not to, it's not going to take a lot of tension, but I'm going to do it where the wheel is so it's nice and solid. And there it's going to fall off. So let's try that again, shall we? Okay, like that. And then turn it around carefully. Sorry folks, getting out of frame here for a second. And then we'll do this side here. And because these clamps are nice and flat on the top, once I glue it, I'll lay it upside down. So let's start in with some cement. Some there. Some there. And then down there, thanks to my making sure that everything's straight on the inside, this should all stick together pretty well up front here. Okay, so there it is. So I'm going to set this down like this and let it dry really well. Whoa. Let it dry really well before I do the back. Okay, now the front is done, so I need to do the same thing to the back, and I'm going to clamp it. You know what, I might use tape on this, because let's see. There we go. Okay, so I got that. So now, same thing. I'm going to use some, this is kind of big and bulky. I'm going to have to do this off camera. Let that dry. On this, I'm going to do the periscopes here, and I'm going to do the same thing that I did on the previous ones. I can't remember if it was in the last episode or in this earlier in this episode, but basically what it boils down to, using my Infinity Easy Cutting Type A cutting mat, I'm making long strips of masking tape to put on the lenses of the periscopes. And I just looked at different sizes and determined which one I need. In this case, 0.8 is the width, and 1, 2, 3, 3 wide is what I need to cover it up. And I'm doing it on the sprue just to make it a little bit easier. Drop it in place like that. And that way, whenever I paint it, the clear spot will stay clear. All I have to do is peel it off. These mats are really awesome, I must say. They make masking small things like this, or something you need really straight, easy. Okay, I got those glued in place, and then this cover right here goes on here. Need to smooth out some seam lines here first, some mold seam lines. Get that one and that one. And then put it in place like that. There's a couple of small pins fit into holes, and then put some cement like that. Make sure it's firmly pressed in place. Put a little bit more there and there. And let's see, I need to straighten one of those bits of masking tape. There we go. All right, so those are ready. So I'm going to cut the rest of these parts off. That go on the front here, and then come back and actually install them. All right, right now I am gluing on these little rain gutters, and let me show you how I'm doing it because I can't do it on camera. I bent the part, which is this, bends lengthwise, and what I did is I used my tweezers and I butted it up against this right here, the bottom edge of this. Hopefully you can see what I'm pointing at here somewhat. I held it in place carefully using the superstructure here to steady my hand, then using, I think they're called glue loopers, with some thin super glue. I just touched it on the end here and let that tack up. Then I moved down, and that held it in place, and then I went down to the other side and did it there. I was pleasantly surprised that it worked that easily. Now, I'll probably knock it off at some point, but there you go. So I'm going to do the other one and off camera, and then come back and work on some of this other stuff, show you what we're doing. And just as a point of reference, these are the kit parts here. Quite a bit more clunky looking, but still serviceable if you don't have the photo etch. Quite serviceable, actually. And even has some tack weld detail on the inside edge there. But just to show you what I would do if I was using these, I would clean them up like this. And like that, and like that. Then, using a sanding stick, I would carefully sand that stuff off. And it would be ready to go. These actually aren't bad. They're a bit thicker, obviously, but they would still work. So anyway, I'll do the other one real quick and then come back. With all of these small parts ready, including these little photo etch bracket things, I can start assembling some of this. So let's start with the front here and the hatches. So we have this hatch here. And let's see, this hatch here. There it goes. It's kind of sitting kind of high for some reason, but there it goes. Now it's in place. Okay, so let's to me extra thin. There is one other part I need to do, but I have no idea what in the world it's supposed to be. It's this right here. You can use either MA10 or E21, and it's just this blob that you can't even see what it is. So I'm going to have to look on the box and see if maybe I can see what it is that's supposed to go on there. But I'll get to that in a minute. I'll do these hatches first. Whoops. That. Then we have these things here, which I have no idea what they are. They look pretty cool. And they go here and here. So I'm going to have to put a little dab of cement in there to hold it. Wow, that was harrowing. A little more fiddly than it should be. Do the same here. Whoa. Oh my goodness. I wish you could see this, folks. This part is teetering halfway off the edge of my desk. That was sketchy. Okay, that looks pretty good. So I can put some more cement in there, make sure it's locked in place, as they say. Then these little things here, and what these are extra gun sights, manual gun sights, that if something happens up here, then one of these guys can get out and lay down on the deck and look through that hole and help aim the gun. Just kidding, folks. That's humor. I have no idea what these things are, other than probably some kind of a lifting ring or something. But it's not what I just said it was. That was totally fabricated. Alright, so there's that. And that. And then this piece here. And the one on the other side. Just a little tab that fits in a slot on the side there. I was kind of concerned about how it was going to fit with that photo etch Zimmerit in place, but non-issue. Okay, so we got those. Now the next thing I need to do, I need to tilt this up just a little bit. Like that. And then these here, one goes here and one goes here. So for that, whoops. So for that, I'm going to use some black super glue. Put them right in place like that. Okay, the rest of them I'm going to do off camera, but I just wanted to show you how they kind of fit there. These are hooks that go, let's see, here and here, and they are for the tow cable. So same thing. use some black super glue. And according to the illustration on the front of the box, one of them goes slightly I can't really tell that great, but it looks like it goes just in front of this, or like right underneath here. Let's go here. That's where it goes. Is it really? I don't know. That's where it's going though. So that goes there. And then the other one goes like in between here. So I'll get those bent up and get them put on there. Do the same on the other side, and that will take care of that. All right, so that takes care of step 21. So now we can move on to the last step, which is 22, and that is the gun and the travel lock. So let me get the parts for the gun first, and we'll get this all glued together. Alrighty then, working on this gun, I have decided to do something here. So the instructions call for a 11, 17, and 18, and then one of the barrels. I'm not using, obviously, that barrel. I'm using the aluminum barrel. But to do something different here, because I have them, and I don't know how many more kits I'm going to build that need something like this, I decided to use the Def Model muzzle brake cover set. Now it's actually, you know, it says on the package for Tiger 1, but it's the same gun. And all I had to do, cut the pour block off, drill a hole, and boom. Just like that. Just for something different. So all you need to do is glue that on there. And I used, let's see, a 5/64 drill bit to drill the hole in the back, because it fits perfectly, nice and snug. And yeah, really stoked. So I'm going to glue that on there with the famous, where is my, there it is, famous black CA glue. And I'm putting it on here like this, because that way if any squeezes out, it'll just go along this edge here, and all will be right with the world. I drilled the hole a little bit deeper just to accommodate any extra. So there we go. Just like that. So now I got to just glue the barrel in, and Jolly Joe. While that's drying, I'm going to get the travel lock parts, which are C1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Alright, so I'm ready to do the travel lock here, and it is going to be somewhat tricky because these parts are really small, some of them, and they've got to fit just so. So I'm going to have to carve this out, I think, a little bit to make sure this fits properly, because the hole for this was not very defined. It's more of a kind of an ovalish blob. So I'm having to cut this out to make sure it fits that part there. Okay, I got that in place. Now I'm going to make sure this one fits. I'm not going to glue it in yet because it has to go in after the bottom part of the travel lock. So that's going to need a little bit more work as well. Okay, so I've got that part in place. Now I need to do this one, and this one's going to take a little bit of, whoa, a little bit of magic here. Not really magic, but oh, forgot to sand the inside of this, and this is kind of visible. Molding seam line there. Okay, so there's that. So now I've got to get this in position here. Now there's another part that goes on here, but I can put that on after I get this part done, because I want to make sure that I get all this lined up right. Oh my gosh. Well, you know what? This is what I'll do. I'm going to put this in place, and I'm going to glue it to hold it, and then I'll put the other part. Whoops. Okay, so let's do this. That there. That'll kind of hold it in place, hopefully. Then we'll push that. There we go. Oh, crud. Man. These little teeny tiny pins and stuff are just, oh, crikey. Sorry this is taking so long, folks, but I'm just trying to show you how I'm handling this. I feel like a surgeon here. There we go. All right, and then this piece goes there like that. Whoops. Like that. Ah, come on. Oh, crikey. Getting there, people. Whoops, patience. Almost. Oh my Lord, just knocked a photo etch piece off. Man, that's what I hate about photo etch. It's very delicate. And for a ham-fisted bloke like me, there. That part was kind of hard to get snapped in, but we got it. So, get it lined up here. Make sure it's all properly aligned. And then glue it all, and then let it sit before I try and wrestle that gun into place. There we go. All right, so we'll let that dry, and then in the meantime, I'm going to put this little photo etch part back. And I'll go ahead and put this in place. Whoops. Like that. Okay, there's that. So now all I gotta do is let that dry. So while that's drying, I'm gonna take a look at this cable. Now I'm not sure if I'm gonna use the cable. I think I am, but let's put it together first. All right, the steel cable that comes with this is too rigid, so I'm not gonna use that. It doesn't bend very easily, and I really don't want to mess with heating it up and softening it and all that kind of stuff for this particular build. So I'm going to be using some Eureka cable, and this is an assortment pack that I got, and I've used it before, and it's really good because it's copper, it bends easily, holds its shape, and just generally works really well. And the nice thing about the multi-pack is you get all these different sizes, so you can see which one works the best for different things, and then when I reorder, I can order the size I need instead of the multi-pack. So it's really good stuff. If you haven't tried it out, you might check it out. It's good stuff. So first thing I need to do is the tow cable eyes. I need to sand the mold seam line off. Like thusly. Choose which cable will fit the best. So let's see, let's try this 1.25 millimeter cable. That looks pretty close. And the main thing is I need to make sure it fits in the hole here on the cable. I think this is going to be too big, but let's take a look. Yeah, it's too big. Much too big. So I'll put that back in the bag. Okay, so the 0.9 millimeter is a perfect fit. It's wonderful. So this is supposed to be 200 millimeters long. So here's the big thing. See if this is long enough. So let me get my scale out here, and let's see, looks like it is. Oh yeah, a little bit long actually. So I'll cut it off, and for that I have a dedicated cutter. It's an older cutter. Don't use it for plastic anymore, or just for cutting up spruce to throw away. And works perfectly for copper or even steel. So I'm going to keep that little scrap though, because that way I know what size that is, and I will be ordering some more of this wonderful cable in the very near future. So got this, I'll make sure that's nice and twisted. So the instructions show that it kind of loops around through this little bracket that I added on here. It loops through there, and one cable and then loops back, and one end of the cable hangs here. Then the other end goes through this, and then the other eye goes on this shackle here. Now, if you'll notice, It's already in place, because that's what the instructions tell you to do. And that's kind of the annoying thing is, number one, I used to harp in my plastic models for beginners videos that you need to read through your instructions all the way through. And I do that most of the time. I didn't on this one. And besides, when you have something like a Dragon kit where there's 6 billion parts and a lot of little things going on, it's still easy to miss. But this is supposed to be in there, so I'm going to have to take this shackle off. Thank goodness it wasn't the glue-on type. So I'll just have to push the pin out very carefully and then loop that through and thread it through, glue the other end, and hang it on there. And again, that's the nice thing about this cable, is once it's mostly in place, it's still easy to bend it and get it to go where you want. So no big deal. So what I'm going to do, using my tweezers here, I'm going to attempt to hopefully get this pin out. Oh, came right out. Look at that. Holy smokes. That is phenomenal. All right, so I can do that with no problems. So let me get everything set up here, and then we'll start putting it together and get in place. Okay, I glued the first one in, but one thing I'm doing, the holes are kind of shallow, and I want it to have a lot more purchase. So using my 0.9 drill bit, I am just drilling it out a little bit deeper, just so the cable goes down in there further. Because I want there to be more contact in the gluable surface. So I'm going to let this dry here for a second, and take this off. Thread that possibly through there, and then put that back there. Whoops. And then put the pin back. Oh man. I just got to get it lined up so I can get the pin in. You get the idea what's going on. There. After much wailing and gnashing of teeth, and I should have threaded this through here first, but I didn't, so hopefully it won't pop off. Like that. Run it along here. For some crazy reason, I think that's going to be too short. Oh, thank goodness I didn't lose that. So I can just glue that back on there. So I need to prop this up. Mess around a few minutes. Okay, I've got the cable all situated the way I want it. So what I'm going to do, though, is I'm not going to install it, because I want to paint it off the model, because I'm just afraid it's going to be too much of a fat hassle otherwise. So I'm going to set it aside. Actually, I'm going to hang it on a hook out of the way, and then I'm going to put this shackle back on here, just so I don't lose anything. And then I can think about putting this barrel on here. Okay, rest it right there. Now this is where it was risky. I thought about this too late. I didn't have to glue this because I forgot about the travel lock. So fortunately, all I have to do is flex it up just a little bit, and it goes right in place, and it's sitting firmly on that, so it's not going to be floating and looking weird. So there's that. So now all I got to do is clean this up, and I can install this on the top, and should be good to go with the gun. So let's glue this on. Which direction does it go? It goes like this. And this little bit here needs to go past these two here, and then that one fits in between. So I'm going to fumble around with it here, it looks like. Let's see if I can get that to fit there like that. Oh, perfect. So let's put a little bit of cement on there. Some there. And I think, friends and fellow modelers, that concludes construction on this kit. Yes, indeedy, that completes construction on this kit. So with that, it is time to move on to priming, painting, etc. So I'm going to end this video right here. Thanks for following along on part 6 of the Dragon 1/35 scale SdKfz184 Elefant. And as I said, next episode, we'll start prepping this thing for paint. So if you like this video, hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed and you'd like to see more of this build or any of my other builds, hit the subscribe button. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So thanks for following along. It's been a fun journey building this thing. Frustrating at times due to my own questionable skills, let's call it. But anyway, it's been fun. So as always, thanks for watching Plastic Models by a Regular Dude, and I will see you all next time.